And sitting, waiting in the wings, I think I see him already there, is Michael. I think it's, hi, Mike. Michael, I've seen, I haven't met you personally, but I've certainly watched you in action before. I love watching Michael put a microphone on and get in front of a camera. He's just a natural. So today, we're really happy to have you with us to give us all the latest updates on what's happening with Flex, and to thank you in advance for supporting us with some of our prize donations that will be given out. So I'm going to stop sharing and you turn the stage over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here, and I'll just do an audio check. Audio sound okay?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. You read me 5x9. Well, I'm glad to be here, and going to do a little different today. There'll be some product in there, but I want to take us to the next level. We've done so many videos on the core part of the product and whatever, but we want to jump through, and I'll share my screen in a minute on. I call it jokingly with my friends as the death of the RS232 port, and I'd be happy to see it go because I've worked in it professionally. I do a lot with sports timing, a little bit with the NHL, and all of our timing devices are still RS232. And we're going, geez, guys, would you just put this on a LAN? It would be so much easier.
If there's any group that needs to be taken to the next level, this is the group.
Yeah.
So have fun.
Yeah, so thanks. So let me do a screen share here, and let's see, we get desktop 2, and the Mac is always entertaining. So how's that looking?
Looks great.
Okay, let me just get a better view of things here. Okay, so the chat window's disappeared on me, so I will I'll just do my stuff, and you can do yours, and we'll go forward. So
we'll capture questions for you.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the future. And my background, I've been a ham since, I don't know, how many of you guys were the projectionist in your high school, type of thing, and ham radio? And of course, there was no internet, and so 17, or I guess it was about 14. I was probably one of the youngest people in Canada. So my call's VA3 Mike Whiskey. I've been a ham since mid 70s, early 70s, I guess. I've been in every part of it. I like HF. I've been president of repeater clubs. I've set up repeaters. I was part of a great group here in Toronto called the Toronto FM Communication Society. And these guys were bleeding edge in the repeater world, and what they were building in microcontrollers and stuff. I could do a whole hour presentation on the system we had, which today would be easy in asterisk, but back then really tough. And I learned so much from these people. I've worked in the IT career in data protection and data backup. I was responsible for a war room setup on September the 12th, where I had to drive from Toronto to New Jersey, actually. And if you want a piece of entertainment, was trying to cross the border on September the 12th back in 2001. So that was an exercise. Ham radio has been an amazing part of my career too. Of the jobs I've had, only one wasn't related to the fact I had a ham radio license. Everything else had cracked open a door and got me the next set of interviews. So if you're young, the hobby is good to you, especially if you're working into a technology business. So because it generally means you don't mind blowing things up or prying under the covers or figuring out how something works. So this is where we're going to go today. So this all starts from, as an operator, trying to make my station much more reliable, and band change and stuff. When we first set up our first stations, we had an HF antenna, a wire antenna, and maybe we paper logged, or we're, today might be logging on an iPad, but pretty straightforward, right? I'm on 20, I'm working some DX, or maybe I'm tinkering in a contest like a QSO party or something, which are great contests to jump in. And that's good. And I decided I really like this. This is good. So what do but I'm not hearing, like, this guy down the street, he's hearing everybody. I didn't hear anybody. And so how do I do better? Well, maybe application, or maybe better antennas. So guess what? It's like sailboat, right? It's like 2-foot-itis in the sailboat world. We start adding more things. Well, maybe some more wire antennas that are specific to the bands we want to work. Maybe we're going to get on 160 and figure out how do we do that in a really small city lot. And now we're going to take advantage of cat control of the radio. Well, that's pretty much a given today, but back in the 90s, that was really bleeding edge. And maybe we might find a beam and toss in an SB200 amplifier, because they're really inexpensive, but they're pretty good amplifiers. And we start to build this up, and I want to thank, I go scarfing the internet for pictures, and where I can, I give people credit. And so there's some stories on some pictures where I reached out to people today. One of them is quite timely. So thanks to November 2 Whiskey Lima. I don't know if I get this off his QRZ site, but I found it anyway. So here we go. Maybe your house starts to look like this. Now, I just found this picture an hour ago, and I put it up there. I do searches in Google Images for, HF contesting station. I grab, oh, that's a great picture. I pull it down and I look closely, and I look at the license plate, and it's my friend VA3PC in Northern Ontario, near North Bay. And oh, that was appropriate. So I know Paul very well, and now I've got a great picture of his wonderful house. So we've built up our station a bit more, and maybe we're getting a little, we're getting faster at it, but oh wow, I need that multiplier. He's up on 20, but I'm on 40. Well, I just want to click and go there. So, well, I've got different monoband antennas, right? So I'm going to flip from one to the other. I got to find the coax switch. Now we've got DX clusters involved. Maybe I'm running a multi-2 or a multi-single station, and my buddy's operating when I'm not. And he may not know my station. He doesn't know where the antennas are. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. He can't remember what antenna switch to flip from what to what. So how many people have been up in the middle of the night? You've done a quick band switch from maybe 160 to 80, and the amplifier won't tune. And you're staring at it. Now, you're pretty tired probably, and you're on about your 19th cup of coffee, but you're just not thinking straight. So these are the things we needed to solve. The amp won't load, right? Seen that. What's that arcing sound in the amplifier? Done that. What was that bang? Done that. When Henry amplifiers go, they make big noises. Ask me how I know. So, oops, that went forward. So let's go. So finally we get carried away. Okay, I know none of you have done this. Well, maybe one or two of you this big, but we've now added receiving antennas. So we want them on in the low bands, or maybe we're getting into full multi-signal. And while I'm talking contesting, the same is true for DXing, and you're trying to increase your DXCC count. You want to be the first into a pileup, so you're the first out, not spending an hour trying to get there. The concept's exactly the same. So one feeds the other, and we tend to use, or at least I tend to use, my DXCC count to work out some bugs in my station until I get into contesting mode, where I don't have time to work out bugs in stations. So, but for me, it's great. I love it. But tell you what, it's RS232. So as we know, it's a bit of it's in today's world, nobody plays with RS232 except the ham operators and some timing guys. So I grabbed this picture off the internet from Sugar Echo 3 X-Ray, John, and he may even be listening. So, but it's a great example of it is an SO2R station, which means single operator, 2 radios. So he's trying to use 2 radios to do a bunch of different things, because in his spare time, he's probably an air traffic controller and he likes doing that sort of thing. Actually, he's not. I know what he does for a living. But the point is, he wants to be able to flip from one radio to the other. His logging program needs to go from one radio. I got to make sure I log that rare DX on the right band now, because now I'm hoping my computers all work. But what have we got here? We've got 3 PCs, 2 radios, some tuners, a microham station master, bandpass filters, watt meters, and an amplifier, which is an amp supply LK450. I had one of those. They were a great amplifier. And a receiving loop. And I'm going to pause here, because when you showed up at the club meeting and you can bring this forward as a presentation, this is a rite of passage. The geek in you has really come out. Look what I grew. And that's really a lot of fun. And so you present it to the club, and some of them get it and go, that's really cool. And then the rest of them are asleep. Well, it's just because it looks cool, but they're not going to comprehend it, because it's not what they do. But beautiful piece of work here, an amazing diagram. And there's a lot of hours and days and stuff. We've got automated rotor control, so you can send commands. And each one of these requires a unique communications path. And you may actually have a partial engineering degree to get here. Well, maybe not, but some of my best friends geeky technical friends have no formal education. We just love the technology. So no, just poking fun around. So here's the key part. When you get into tracking what frequency I'm on, you have to decide is the radio going to drive the frequency or is the computer? So if it's the computer, that means I always have to have the computer on if I'm logging stuff. Well, you probably do anyway. Or if I want to do a band change, well, that's not always practical. Or maybe I just want to get on and rag chew on 80, but I want to make sure the antennas are all correct. Or does the radio drive all this information? Well, that works too, but that's the sad part. We're there. Most of these radios today, even today's radios, new ones, may only have one or two, in the newer radios, 2 CAT ports available to send. CAT being computer aided transceiver sends the frequency information out to whatever device. Could be a stepper, it could be an amplifier, it could be a bandpass filter. And we quickly run out of those. And so that's a bit of a bottleneck. And yes, you can get into VSP. There's a lot of ways to work this through in software. There's some amazingly well done hardware devices that are specialized to disseminate this RS232 information. But why? I mean, it's an old technology. We should be moving forward. So I am going to go into the LAN world in a minute. And like I said, does the computer follow the radio, or does the radio follow the frequency from the computer? And where's the stepper going to get its information? So this is, keep that in mind. Okay, it's just, how do you glue this all together? Well, I've taught people how to do it. I say, okay, let's start with a spreadsheet, and start putting in, okay, the radio sends a frequency, and then it's going to go here, and then it's going to go there, and then is that a null modem cable? Oh, but that one doesn't do that baud rate, because RS232 devices, some of them do every popular baud rate, some only do one. Older Kenwood radios may only do 4800 baud. Yaesu radios may only do 96, and I'm guessing, actually, I think it's higher. If you get the idea that if you use RS232, all these things have to match. And of course, is it what they call a DTE device or a DCE device? Does it need a modem cable? I don't know. I shouldn't have to know. And then you finally get to the point and go, maybe I'll go back to QRP, and I'll take my brand new FT818 and a buddy stick and hit the park, and it'll just work. And that's just, hey, I do that from time to time as well with the OEM radios I have. In fact, I was playing with one on just yesterday. So here's a great example of another one from Victor Kilo 4 Sugar November. Something else I found on the internet. Great diagram. I spent a lot of time looking at this. He's got 2 FT2000s. He's got a couple of linears. So it doesn't say what they are. But look at all the control cables. Each one of these cables you have to custom build. He's got an SDR play because he's using it as a waterfall for his radio, and amazing band awareness. We've all learned that having that pan adapter available, whether it's on a web SDR or something, works really well to see what's really going on. I play in the satellite world from time to time, and I use my Flex 6600 with 2 transverters on it, a VHF and a UHF. And lately I've been on RS44, which is a VHF up and UHF down. Well, it used to be you dial up and down looking for people. Well, I just sit there and look at the waterfall and go, oh, I can tell that guy's just calling CQ. I dial in, he calls CQ, I call him back. We have a little conversation. It's having this visual information is just huge. What is really fun if you're a satellite person is to actually watch people find themselves. And if you've never worked on a satellite station, generally what you used to do was you'd listen to the downlink on one band, and then you'd spin the transmitter around in TX and CW mode or constant carrier mode, and until you heard yourself go by, and then you, well, now you can see that on the waterfall. It's sort of cute. And again, in other more diagrams that you have to build cables, and we're not getting any younger. So, and some of people I talk to a lot of people that I just can't solder anymore. I just don't have that fine motor control. So who makes cables? Who makes custom cables? Well, 1 or 2 people. So let's try to get around that by using things where we can buy cables over the counter. I found this online. Actually, this came through actually, surprisingly, it was not on a Kenwood reflector. But this person, you can read this. Gentleman had a TS890 connected to a KPA 500 to the radio serial port, the amp follows the radio, no problem. Exactly what we're talking about. So when he changes bands, he goes from 40 to 80, the amplifier's on 80. Works perfectly. I've got a KPA 500. It works beautifully. But he's also got a TS 590 that he wants to use as a second receiver, and he wants it to track. Well, now what do? Well, you can build some Y cables or a couple of other creative things, but it does take some serious thought. And then the discussion carries on with the baud rate, and you can read through all this. I stopped reading this thread after 10 emails back and forth with how you should do this. And the point being, there's just no structure to it. It was, you've probably asked the question, how do I get from point A to point B? And somebody will say, well, you do this. It's like in the amateur world, if you ask what's the best antenna for 80 meters, you're going to get 20 answers, all of them right. And which one are you going to use? And I tell my wife, it was like the day when we used to buy cordless phones and you walked into Best Buy or whatever to look for a cordless phone and there's 20 of them. Which one do you buy? I don't know, the one with the color you like that matches the kitchen. Anyway, so this makes it, hard for somebody that may be new into this part of the hobby and they're trying to comprehend how it works. And it even makes it hard to teach, because when you try to explain it to somebody else is going to say, well, that won't work, I do it this way, or that will work, but my way's better. And then you're the new ham, and I'm really feel for you, and you just don't know who to listen to anymore. So hopefully we can help get you through that. So, oh my God, what do you do next? So the RS232 technology was developed in about 1960. We've talked about this. It's got a one-to-one relationship. It actually has a short physical range of about 10 feet. Now, many people, myself included, can push it a lot farther. I actually have done it up to 900 feet with reliability, but at slower baud rates. There's places where you can have RFI ingestation issues, and we want to eliminate RFI as possible. We have data rates, and then I know everybody on this call has probably plugged a USB to RS232 device into a computer, and it's been COM4, and then Windows Update comes along, or you move. This is a good one. I moved my desk and cleaned it up, and I plugged it all back in, and I didn't quite plug the adapter I had in the same physical port on the computer, and now it's not COM4 anymore, it's COM6. And so, you got to go reconfigure everything. There is a way around that, by the way. If you're looking about how to get through that little nightmare, is you want to look for devices from StarTech. They're FTDI devices, and they'll say with retention. And so they always go to the same number you set them up for. So we started to phase out LAN RS232 and we moved to the LAN world. And now obviously I'm a Flex person, so we're going to talk about the Flex equipment that does this. This is a bit older shot from Craig K9CT, his contest station. Now this is a big contest station, but I want you to look between the monitors, between the guy in the red shirt and the guy in the yellow shirt. Notice there's not many wires running back there. He's got amplifiers on top, actually the radios and the amplifiers. This doesn't look like a HamShack. There's not enough wires. And he's got 1, 2, 4 stations here. And this is how you can clean up your shack. When I built my last shack, not the one I'm at now, I purposely built it 2 feet out from the wall so I could walk in behind it and see things. So the key parts, and I'll touch on each one of these. We have radios, we have amplifiers, we have a tuner genius, and we've got these really cool antenna switches and a rotor genius, all of which are LAN-based. And I'm sure there's other stuff out there as well. These are our products. If I was probably not so focused on Flex right now, I'd go looking for other items. But I believe, well, I won't even guess, but I'm sure Green Heron and others for rotor stuff are probably getting down the world. And just a data point, the LAN, as we know it, the local area network, AKA the internet in the house, it's an industry standard. It works wirelessly. It works with wired. There's no, I'm doing the finger quote, there's no distance limitations, meaning you could talk to your radio locally or 1,000 miles or 100 miles away. Generally, it's easy to configure once you understand it. And I'm not saying you have to, but if you want to, it's easy to teach. It's pretty much set and forget. And it is actually designed to share data easily. And when the Flex 6000 radios were designed, out of the box, they were designed with a LAN connector on the back, and remote internet was core right from the beginning. Remote internet, remote radio operation was designed from the beginning, right in. And I remember long before I started working with Flex, I met Steve Hicks at Dayton. It was about 2013, and I had my credit card out, and I was about to buy a 6300. And I said, Steve, what's this connector on this LAN connector on the back? What can I do with this? And he looks at me, and you've got to know, Steve. He goes, anything you like to. And he's right. And we'll talk a little bit about that near the end. We talked about this in the QSO Today Expo. The LAN and the HamShack is almost now as important as the antennas on your roof or your backyard or wherever. We use this for email. We use this for information sharing. We use it for DX clusters, DX Max, the HamShack hotline for the phone network. Why not use it to control our radios, our antennas, and our rotors and everything else? Why not have a common vehicle to do all this? Would you make a phone call on an RS232 port? Well, you could, and I did it in early Skype days, but no, not practically. So with the Flex framework, and I'm still coming up with a good name about this, and the IT guys will fabric framework. These are all key buzzwords if you come out of the IT world for data sharing. So bear with me. We've tried to make it easy. We've tried to make the communication path fairly simple. And the diagram on the right is actually a complete SO2R station. And I'll show that again later back and forth for you to digest a little bit. But we have two RF cables going to an amplifier, going to a tuner, going to an antenna switch, and a LAN cable going to each. And we would stick the computer on the side for our logging. And that is it. And I have a friend of mine, amazing contester, amazing CW operator, and he'll drive to zone 2 for a contest. I'm in Toronto. So his drive to zone 2 in northeastern Quebec is about 16 hours. So he'll take a week off. He generally goes on a Tuesday. So he'll spend all day Tuesday driving there. He'll get up Wednesday morning, and because the antennas haven't been used in a while, he'll spend all day Wednesday getting the antennas up to speed, and hopefully it'll be okay. The plan is Wednesday antennas. He'll then take an entire day Thursday to set up his SO2R environment because he's got a bunch of radios, got a couple of radios, a couple of computers, and he literally takes them all day Tuesday. And I don't want to say his name because he's pretty popular, and he's a cool guy, and he's a great guy actually. But I phoned him up and I said, I could send you a box of stuff and you could set up your whole SO2R environment. And I use that only as a benchmark, even if you're just a DXer, in 20 minutes. And look at that. You're going to get a whole more day for antenna work and then actually sleep on Friday so that you can hit the contest fresh. And without fail, if you're a serious contester, most of us get stuck with it's 2 minutes to contest time and I'm still trying to get something working. The plan was to sleep Friday afternoon. So, and by the way, all these devices do support RS232 if you want to hang an old radio on the side. So if you wanted to use a Canwood ICOM Yaesu Elecraft into the Power Genius, you could, or into the TGXL, the Tuner Genius, you could, or into the 2x8 antenna switch, you could. And the 2x8 antenna switch really means that 2 radios can access the antenna switch and share 8 antennas if you're not familiar with that technology at all. Okay, so here's the commercial. This will give me a few minutes. We've been building the 6000 series radio since about 2013. There's 63 and 6500 are not built anymore, but if you're looking to move into the Flex line, they're still available. They're still an amazingly great value, and today's software that we ship out today still runs on them perfectly. So you're not stuck in the sell the old radio to get a new radio upgrade. And I use this story every time because it's just such a great example, and I did it personally. The 756 Pro came out. I love that radio. It was great. Well, then there was the Pro 2. Well, I gotta have that. So I sell the Pro at a loss, about half price, buy a new Pro 2, and away we go. Well, then the Pro 3 came out. Same story again. Sell the Pro 2 at another big loss and buy the Pro 3 brand new. Not the case in a software-defined radio situation. And we're starting to see that now with other vendors. And SDR, by the way, isn't really a technology as it is a build technology. So we've gone from tubes, We've gone into semiconductors or transistors, and then into semiconductors, of course, and then into surface mount, and finally into FPGA, or other key terms, field programmable gate arrays. And it's just a build technology. Now, we've labeled it SDR, and probably incorrectly so moving forward, but regardless of how you want to use the radio, you still hook up the antenna the same way, and you still turn a volume control and a VFO knob somewhere else. And what happens in the middle, we don't really care anymore. And if you don't think you've ever owned an SDR, that means you probably don't own a cell phone, because every cell phone is also an SDR radio. It is the ability to get rid of all those coils and whatever, and mixers, because mixers are noisy. We don't like mixers because they're now direct sampling, and we're just grabbing raw RF and dealing with it in the radio, in the field programmable gate array. And without any mixers, we've actually gained a fair bit of cleanliness in the signal we receive. So that's why you do direct sampling, one of many reasons. By the way, the 6300 has 2 receivers. We call them slices. It's got a 1x2 antenna switch. And the 6500 is the same thing, but it has 4 slices or receivers and 30 dB bandpass filters, which are quite handy if you're in a crowded environment like Field Day. So today we have the 6400 and the M model. And the difference is the M gives you the nice front panel display. You do not need a computer to run this radio. You can sit it on a picnic table with a battery and an antenna and get on the air. The 6400 non-M model is a black box. It can sit on your desk, under your desk, at the base of the tower, 100 miles away, type of thing. And we use clients to connect to the radio, to operate the radio. And it's a Windows client called SmartSDR. There's a Mac client and an iOS client called SmartSDR for Mac or iOS. And the Maestro, which is a control head. I'll talk about that in a minute to give you a bit more in depth on that. So the M model, like I said, it's got the front panel. And you can also have 2 people use these radios at the same time. And we call that multiplex. And you could actually have one person on 20 and one person on 40 doing their own thing. You share the transmitter because it's a shared transmitter environment, unlike all other radios, which are a main receiver and a sub receiver. And then the main receiver, of course, owns the transmitter. It's married to that. We don't really care what receiver's doing what, but when you need the transmitter, as long as it's not being used, take off, you can go ahead and use it. And it'll already be configured in the mode you need it in. 66. So spectral capture units. That's the part that captures all the RF energy from the antenna. The 63, 65, and 64 have one spectral capture unit. It means you can only use one feed line at a time. When you get to the 6600 and the 67, which are still available, 67 still available, you have 2 of these, and it behaves like having 2 unique radios. And this is why this is the favorite for SO2R operators as well. But it also means if you're a DXer, you can be listening on 80 and chasing DX or whatever on another band at the same time. And you don't have to share an antenna. You can use 2 unique antennas. Hence the reason the 2x8 antenna switch. You have 4 slices or receivers. And if you are a contester and you're thinking about playing around in SO2R, everything you need is built in. So you don't need station masters to control antenna switching. Or your audio, which is called OTRSP. And it's just ready to go. And as I said, you saw that diagram, that was the entire solution. And then lastly, and radio-wise, we have the 6700. It's been around a while. We still sell a lot of these radios, and when the US military still buys a lot of these radios. We have 8 slices or receivers. Why do I need 8? That's what everybody says, but when somebody buys a 6700, they almost always tell me later, they use 6 all the time. I can burn through 3 pretty fast if I'm on 6 meters. I'll put one on 50.125 to watch for a sideband opening and open it up a bit just to watch for CW. I might put one on 50.313 for FT8. I might put one on 50.323 to watch for European opening because we're trying to get the DX off 313 when the band's open. And I may even have one open on .260 for meteor scatter all at the same time. And WSJT will handle those 3 all quite nicely. We also have VHF with this unit as well, although it's 5 milliwatts out, so there is an external amplifier available online to give you full power, but very common. This was put in there as an IF for our weak signal operators because they needed it to drive their transverters.
Michael?
Yes, sir.
Brian, NT6F. There's a question, two questions so far. One about firewalls, which I think maybe we could get to downstream a little bit. But David Gould is asking, can you control a 6600 with both Smart SDR and a Maestro?
Yes. Yes, and I'll talk about SmartLink in a minute, but thanks for the lead in. And not only that, and we're not necessarily limited to those clients. So I'll answer that too near the end because I do have a slide about the API because it's worth bringing up as well. So, but yeah, the clients, each radio supports 2 clients that we don't care what you are, which is great. So you could have, we have clubs doing this now, a bunch of them. So 2 different club members can join. They have to coordinate a little bit, but for the most part, it's working incredibly well. So the Maestro, this is beautiful unit. When I first thought, again, I wasn't working for Flex, and the first words out of my lips to Gerald Youngblood was, "I'm glad you didn't make it small." That display is 8 inches across. Most other radios have 7-inch displays, and you can sit this on your desk. You can plug your headphones in it, your CW key, etc., and just operate normally from your backyard. With SmartLink remotely, you can actually operate CW remotely a long ways away. Digital requires a bit of different work, and I have a whole remote talk on digital type of thing, but I generally say you as a PC local to the radio, but that's beyond the scope of today's presentation. But if you want to talk about that, you can give me a call and I'll explain how remote digital operation works. But yes, we have no problem for operators running remote CW with a key plugged right into the back of this. Again, half a world away. In fact, a lot of customers are doing it. It can be battery powered. You plug it in the wall cube. You can hook it up to your network with a LAN cable, or you can log into other radios with SmartLink or your own radio type of thing. And that's our remote tool. I don't have a full slide on SmartLink, but I think I mentioned it again. So I'll go through that. If I don't, I'll certainly address it. Power Genius XL, we've released this about a year ago now. We almost can't keep them in stock. And I generally wouldn't do this, but I went and read all the reviews on eHam the other day, and I'm blown away. So I feel comfortable saying, if you're interested in a Power Genius XL, it's not exactly an inexpensive amplifier, but it is built incredibly well. It's a $7,000 US amplifier, and I just really can't believe how many of these go out the door. It is a dual purpose amplifier, or it'll support 2 radios at the same time, like a 6600, or 2 OEM radios at the same time. It'll accept band information from each one. So it'll band track, or it'll just RF sense. It's let me explain the harmonic dummy load. Any HF amplifier we have today, if you were to generate a 1500 watt signal on 14 megs, it's also going to produce a harmonic on 28 meg. Now, of course, we can't let that harmonic out, so we have a low pass filter to capture that, and we don't want that on the antenna, or it'll get radiated. So it happens is, what do you do with that energy? Well, it gets reflected, and it will actually, in every other amplifier, reflect back to the power amplifier, and it has the ability to cause distortion, or IMD components that give you not the cleanest signal. And so what do you do with that? How do you prevent that from happening? Well, we actually have a high pass filter, and what it does is it grabs that reflected energy and sends it over to a dummy load, and ensures that it doesn't hit the power amplifier, and we actually get a much cleaner signal. And as well, the Power Genius is directly integrated with Smart SDR, and you can see in these 2 diagrams, the bigger one in the middle is a screenshot from a Maestro, and we can see down the meters on the side. I get my amplifier SWR, my temperature, and my power out. And the other screenshot to the right of that is from Smart SDR, same thing. On the last thing, not the last thing, it'll run a 120 at about half power, 240 at full power. And also included is some software work called MEFA, Maximum Efficiency Algorithm. And yes, I did have to practice a lot to make sure I would say it right the first time. And by varying the bias on the amplifier, we can control how efficient the amplifier is. And why would you want to do that? Well, it might take you a bit more drive to get your full legal limit out, depending on your mode of modulation. But the amplifier runs a lot cooler. And again, we could probably do a whole long discussion on MEFA. We certainly describe a bit more of it in our YouTube channel under the FlexRadio YouTube channel. And it supports OEM radios as well, which I think I said. The Tuner Genius is a brand new tuner. It's designed to go directly with the Power Genius XL. It's an SO2R model and a 1x3 antenna switch. So depending on what you want, the 1x3 is a little less money. It has direct LAN interfacing to Flex radios because that's where we're going. It actually integrates very well with the 403 antenna Genius switches. So if you have multiple antennas, there's some configuration you can do in a nice GUI. And you can have it located near the radio or the base of the tower. In fact, you could put the radio and the tuner right at the base of the tower. You have a little hut there. And it's a lot easier to run Cat5 and a lot less money back to your shack than it is to run lots of LMR 400 type of thing. I'm just going to get a drink here for a second. And if you want to know more about this, we have a great demo on the Flex YouTube channel by Mac, as he did for QSO today, but he goes through some really cool features. So lastly, the 403 Antenna Genius products. We have a 2x8 switch, a 1x8 switch, and the Rotor Genius. The Rotor Genius is really genius, and it'll control just about any rotator. And what I really love about this, because I got burned by it the other day, so I have a T2X in place right now, and I'm putting in an alpha spid rotor. That's a project at my remote coming up for the spring. And I went to work a guy on 20-meter FT8 in China. Well, for me, that's due north. I pointed due north, he went away, and I pointed back to, I forgot which way I was pointed. Oh yeah, there he is. Well, there's some sort of weird long path stuff going on. Anyway, I found him, I worked him, didn't give it another thought. 6 meters open a day or two later. I could hear this guy calling CQ in the Canary Islands, spun the beam over that way, and he disappeared. And so you know where I'm going with this story. So I put it back, I worked the guy. Now, fortunately, I'm at the cottage where the remote station is. I better go have a look at the antenna. So I park the beam at 45 degrees where it lives, and it's my reference point because it's right parallel to a road near here. Walk out there, and sure, if the beam isn't off by 65 degrees, because it had spun on the mast. Had I had the FluxGate compass that mounts right on the boom on there, I wouldn't have even cared, or at least I would have known. Because I was using a T2X, it told me where the mast was, but not where the antenna was. So I'm going to talk about SmartLink right now. So SmartLink is what we use to connect from remotely into the radio. And if you're a current customer today, our apologies. Yes, we're dealing with an outage. We will get it sorted out. We actually have it fixed. And we're just going through the QA and the packaging process, which is not a trivial process. So bear with us. We will get it resolved. And if you want more details on that, they're in our Flex community. So the question was ports. Yes, you need 2 ports open, and it is a peer-to-peer connection. And I'll probably go a little deeper here. But the radio connects the user connects directly to the radio. So there's no external servers involved other than the initial setup, which is nothing more than a telephone book lookup. So what happens is you log into your account on your client. It goes and calls Auth0 and says, hey, where's Mike's radio? What IP address is it at? And what 2 ports is it using? And then it makes the connection accordingly. And it works beautifully. And we did it that way because we wanted it to work easily and beautifully. We didn't want you to have to be a network engineer. And granted, or unfortunately, or fortunately, what we learned is probably 90% of our customers know very little about networks. So it was a good decision. It was something very simple, very reliable, and also ensured that you didn't have to think too much about it other than creating a login and running through a couple of basic setups in Smart SDR. So to answer your question, are there other ways to connect your radio remotely? Yes, absolutely. You can use a specific type of VPN called Smart Ether. if it's really important to you. And but you need to understand a lot more about networks. I think we pretty much answered that. Need any more on that one? As you find the mute button. And lastly, just on the features of the radio, they're an amazing radio. I had a customer return, who was an older gentleman, and he was late 80s, and he said, by far the best radio I've ever used. And we have a 30-day return policy. He did say, I'm sorry, I just couldn't wrap my head around the workflow. And of course that happens. It can happen in any radio or any device. You know, cell phones are a great example. He goes, but I could hear this was an amazing radio. And he actually ended up, I think he bought a Collins radio because he understood it better. The Flex radios have something called controlled envelope single sideband. And that's a math algorithm that happens in the RF end of the radio. And it essentially gives you about a 2.8 dB power increase, effective power increase. You're not actually pushing out any extra power. You're processing it better so that it looks like you are. And it's not really that we're giving more power. It's just that the other radios are not able to deal with it like we are. And they're actually 3 dB down. So this is a big number. You know, this is like double the power, and may not be big deal on 20 meters if you've got a beam, but wow, if you're on 80 or 160 and you're dealing with a wire antenna, that's a huge number. So we have some wide noise blankers as well. They do a very good job of killing wideband noise. We look at a whole megahertz of the radio spectrum and we get rid of it. And again, there's demo videos online, and if you want help to find them, let me know. Cat control, which is the RS232 stuff. This is all built in. I'm going to go into a bit of depth in a minute on that. And DAX, which is digital audio exchange, is how we receive audio for digital modes and send audio for digital modes or voice keyers from N1, MM, etc. And we have a wing keyer emulation also included for your contesting CW pleasure. And we're also not limited to one RS232 device for the legacy stuff, because all the programs we still use today, which are WSJT, et cetera, I'll hit those in a minute. Maybe we want to run a lot of them at the same time, or at least more than one. So that's easy to do. The radio is built in the US, designed and engineered in the US, 2-year warranty, 30-day return policy. That's a big deal, because if you buy a radio from us, you can try it in your own shack, on your own antennas, on your own noise, with your own beer, at whatever time of the day or night you'd like to. I have bought a lot of radios sitting in a store and trying them out and going, okay, that tells me how the buttons work. It doesn't tell me how the radio works. Well, now you can try that out. And then we have guys out there like yourself who have run some amazing add-on programs, because we're now LAN based. They connect directly to the radio. Slice Master by Don Baudre. With Slice Master, you can have it automatically config WSJT to work almost right out of the box. FR Stack adds a lot of features for memories, band changes, and picking up external devices on your desktop to maybe do different types of rapid band changes. WSJT, CW skimmer for contesting and pileups, RTTY skimmer, DM780 for your ham radio deluxe people, FL Digi, and there's a whole bunch more. All these continue to work with the radio on a LAN network because we have an emulator. So if you were to start over, I would say you could grab one of these two radios on the top and hook up your antennas. You'd be on the air and you'd still have all the feature functionality you'd want, digitally wise, contesting wise, or just plain rag chewing wise. And especially if you were going to get into digital modes, you wouldn't have to be buying things like rig experts or whatever to handle your audio. Although some of the newer radios today have sound cards built in, but they're still somewhat cryptic. It just says USB sound device. And well, is that the radio or is that some other thing I got plugged into the computer? Ours aren't. They actually say what sound device it is. This will give you access to 2 antennas and you're ready to go. Now, if you were to add an amplifier, and I wanted to put a picture of an amplifier here, but I couldn't find anybody that I could do without using ours, but it could be ours. But say you wanted to put an Expert or KPA 500 or anybody else's LMDOS amplifier, the B26 from RF Kits. we can have the radio send the data right to the amplifier of what transmit frequency I'm on. And that's a cool feature that while we can do it in today's radio, there's generally only one port. Well, we can have as many as we want. And now the radio is driving the core part of this. Where are we going to go? What frequency are we on? We're going to let the radio always do that. And it just now becomes the heartbeat of the entire shack, and the frequency will track. And if we added an automated antenna switch, the same thing. That's the green circle. Again, it plugs into the back of the radio. You can have as many of these as you like. Well, there's only 2 connectors on the back of the radio. Simple addition of a USB powered hub, and you can add more. And this, now we start to build on the core stuff as we change bands. So these external USB devices on the back of the radio for controlling our OEM stuff, they're an RS232, which is what we talked about in the beginning. But we can also add parallel ones, which have 8 wires on them. And that's really cool for our transverter people, or even yourself. Or maybe you want a light that flashes up on the, outside the door. It says on the air. You can make use of all this logic that's now available right in the back of the radio. Transverter people use it to map their frequencies as they change from, 2 meters, 440, 902, 220, 10 gig, 24 gig, or whatever. And very powerful that way as well. And not only that, you don't have to put up with how we designed how they work. You can have them do things based on how you want them, whether it's the TX slice or the TX transmitter. I want it to report the frequency the transmitter's on, or maybe the active slice. These are different modes of different receivers, all incredibly important. Maybe we want, if the RX antenna is turned on to the receiving antenna A, we want to ground something else. The sky's the limit. And again, very hard to do today without maybe building your own Raspberry Pi or Arduino or some other box that somebody else has developed. So now here's your basic shack. We could have my logging software, a radio, a tuner, an antenna switch, or not, and everything's interfaced together. And you'll notice that we're not using any RS232 stuff. This really helps keep the RFI down, and it makes it easy to clean up or move, or say you had to take it to field day. Very, very simple. Now remember this diagram? All that goes away and it gets replaced with this diagram. That was an SO2R diagram. Okay, that was 2 radios and whatever. This is, you saw this diagram earlier. This is the same feature functionality. And we're using a couple of RF cables and a couple of LAN cables, and of course headsets and stuff we kept out because they're common. And I can't believe in my remote, I've been running a remote since 2005, and every year once I started down the Flex world, I started taking cables out of the box that everything was mounted in. And if you want a tour of my remote station, there's a video tour on my QRZ page. So remember this diagram from Sugar Echo X-ray 3 X-ray? Well, I sent him an email to say, can I use this diagram? And I said, do you have a current diagram? Because I also knew he was a Flex customer. And I got back this. He said, I should have done a diagram for the current setup, but he goes, it was just too easy. And this was Friday, I got the email from him. He's got a 6700, a Maestro, a Flex VFO knob, an Expert amp, LP100 dual channel watt meter. By the way, if you want a real good watt meter for measuring peak envelope power, this is it, any of the LP series. And for our programmer friends, I wanted to show, if you wanted to write your own client, or you wanted to control the radio, or you wanted to do anything special, you can, this is the language on the network. It's plain text English. It's easy to parse. It's easy to understand what's going on. If you wanted to write a client for Android or Linux or Chromebook, it's easy enough to do. And if somebody wants to write those clients, we'd be happy to help you and how to get through things. And more details on where to find that. There's a wiki on the API, so you can Google that. Just FlexRadio API wiki. It'll come right up. And these are the specials we have on this week. And if you're interested in any radios, or your friends are, please contact JP at sales@flexradio.com, or you can call him. I'll show you the number on the next page, and talk to him. He'll call you back. Mondays are crazy days, and we get a lot of sales on Mondays and Tuesdays. So if you email us today and we don't answer for a couple of days, that's because he's just up to his neck in friends of yours. And if you need to find us online, we're on Facebook, a group called the Facebook Enthusiasts. There's almost 4,000 members, pretty active. We have a whole community of great people, of Elmers and stuff. We have a US help desk, YouTube videos, and sales@flexradio.com. Or you can phone us at 512-535-4713, option 1. So at this point in time, I have time for questions.
Thank you, Michael. Let's see. We've got a few questions that have already been posted. Here's one. How do you operate remotely without punching holes in your firewall?
Well, you do. You'll have to open 2 ports, one UDP port, one TCP port. And I thought I had mentioned that. And generally the way it's set up is the quick, painless way to do it is to have universal plug and play turned on and let it do that. And I know we've got some purists out there, because I'm probably one of them, because I'm also an internet security person, at least as a hobby. But I've yet to find anybody that's truly been attacked by something that was open on a universal plug and play port. Could it happen? Yes. Nobody's told me it's actually happened, but I'm sure it has. Not anything I've run into.
That's because you wear a white hat. Some of us know folks who wear black hats.
Yeah, and we tried, by the way, and we've tried to make this really easy to do, where you can just read a cookbook in the manual to make it work.
Can you control a 6600 with both Smart SDR and a Maestro?
Yes.
Easy. Ron is running a 6600 with Smart SDR. Have you resolved the problem of not hearing the side tone of the transmitted CW on the home computer?
No. So that's a long answer. So I'll try to be brief. I'll try to be quick about it. When I've answered it in the community a couple times, yeah, that's a gap, and we're fully aware of that. When you run CW from contesting software, the CW side tone is generated in the device that sends the CW. So when you use the WinKey emulator, it's actually the CW is generated in the radio. So that's where the side tone is generated. Could we plumb it back to the end user? Yes, we need to look. That's a very serious question, and it needs to be addressed. It's not impossible to fix. I have no timeline yet.
Yeah. Sounds like it's a well understood problem.
Oh yeah. Don't worry. It's painful on our side too.
Yeah. John is trying to make up his mind between a 6400 and a 6600. What are the key differences?
The 2 spectral capture units. We used to say the 6300 was sort of like what was the entry level drug, and then you ended up on the 66. 2 spectral capture units. You go from better bandpass filters, 30 to 40 dB filters, to 60 to 70 dB bandpass filters, 2 slices to 4 slices, or receivers. There's probably a few other things, but those are the big points.
Okay. Serge has a great question. For remote operation, how much bandwidth do you need in upstream and downstream?
Excellent question. So the bigger problem with us today, because the radio is now the server and it's sending data out, is we need to know what the upstream is. That's usually the bottleneck. You can get away with about 500 kilobits there's some tricks to turn down what it sends. But if you wanted the pen adapter and the waterfall running at full speed, and maybe about 1.6 meg on the upstream. The other way around, talking, very little. It's like a phone call. But on the receiving end, because we're sending out from the radio, and so that's pretty much it. But there's, again, more discussion on the community and how you can help identify that and tune it.
Okay. Anything new in the works for QRP?
That's we've got a couple things. I have to word this correctly, right? So QRP radio, VHF, UHF radio, a couple other cool things are always on the table. And it's an economics question. So there's a spin the wheel, and can we sell enough of them to make the engineering and pay the staff with them? Our chief operating officer is not a ham operator. He's the pennies and dollars and cents guy. So it always comes down to that, what do we have to sell it for to pay everybody type of thing. So yeah, we're not necessarily in the business of making money, but we are in the business of paying everybody so they can put their kids through school type of thing. So it's still not off the table in either case.
So Mark has a question. Which would you think is better for contesting? A 6400 with 2 slices or a 6600 with 4 slices?
I'd go to the 66 for contesting because at some point in time, if you're serious into contesting, you're going to be up in the middle of the night. You might want to get into some little version of SO2R. So if you have a 6600, it's easy to do. You can also do it on a 64, by the way, even with one, spectral capture unit, because I do it a lot where I'll be on 80, I'll be calling CQ contest and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And I can do sort of like what they call 2-band SIQ, where I can dial around while I'm not transmitting and listen for someone else calling CQ. Either one is fine, but if you're serious about it, just bite the bullet and go to the 66. And because of the built-in bandpass filters and everything as well.
Charlie has a question. He says, you said backup for SmartLink was via Smart Ether, but will any VPN work, and can the fallback be included in Smart SDR?
God, we've had so much heat about SmartLink because of our outage right now, and it's a security outage that we've fixed. I just quoted it wrong. So SmartLink is our tool. Soft Ether is the VPN tool.
Okay.
And I knew in a Facebook post I'd sort of merged the two together, and I knew that was going to come back, and I was going to say it again. So Soft Ether is a great tool for a VPN, and the reason we recommend that is because if you think back, the radio is designed to be easy to find on a network. And so it advertises itself, and I'll go into the weeds a little bit in what's called a layer 2 broadcast. So Soft Ether is one of the only VPNs, and I think others can be configured to do it, but if you understand a bit of networking, will allow that broadcast to actually go over the VPNs. Now, VPNs are generally designed to limit the amount of traffic on the tunnel, because why send it why should it advertise the fact there's a printer here or something when you're never going to use it? So that's why we recommend Soft Ether. RIA and 2RJ has a whole description about how to set it up in GitHub, actually, and more in our community. So you can do it with a Raspberry Pi to Raspberry Pi connection, and we've got a bunch of cookbooks that others have written up. So that's why like OpenVPN or the other ones are generally not the go-to on that.
Okay, we're getting close on time, but we can squeeze in a little bit more. We've got a question, timeline for Maestro deliveries.
So we've been really hip with Maestro, a couple of issues, and you may or may not be aware of that there's serious part shortage in the electronic industries coming up, and we actually have our own technical problems, so it's a bit of a perfect storm. It's been a long time. Our Maestro is one of our best seller, and we want to get them moving as quickly as possible. But there were 2 fires overseas that impacted a lot of things, including our GPSDO, and they're starting to free up. That part is good. The scary part is we're learning the automotive industry is grabbing everything for the next 2 years out because they're worried, and that's impacting little people like, maybe even Yaesu and us and ICOM and Kenwood for getting parts for that. So I don't have a date. Believe me, we want to get them moving. They're one of our best sellers.
Yeah.
So I wish I could give you a better deal.
I had dinner the other night with Kevin and Stu Phillips and some other folks, and that was
wonderful people.
One of the subjects.
Those are 2 really smart guys.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We appreciate your coming on and giving us all the information. We're about out of time here, but we look forward to seeing you perhaps at a real physical Visalia in the near future.
Oh my God, I want to get over the border so bad too, but yeah, it's actually stuck in a bedroom here at our cottage. So, but thanks for having us. I enjoyed it. This is a brand new presentation from scratch, and so I'm always looking for feedback. I'm seeing some of the comments fly by, so hopefully I got the message across, and I'm sure I blew by stuff and left some people with their think our eyes spinning a bit. But if so, just reach out to us.
Okay, so thank you, Michael.